I'm Shannon Heffernan, Golf Fitness and Mobility Specialist here at Dynamic Motion, and I'm here with Wes, and he's going to help me out with some demoing today. So we are talking body swing connection and how the body can play a role in your golf swing. So I'm going to start with just having Wes do a setup here for me, and we're going to talk about golf posture. So one of the things we see a lot of people do is get into a golf posture that's not really all that effective. There tends to be either two main postures. S posture, which is too much extension in the lower back, or C posture, which is too much rounding of the lower back. So now where we get into trouble with this, we can just say make your back neutral, but there actually is a lot of body requirement to even move your spine. So in order to get into a good posture and be able to control your spine, we need to have upper back mobility, we need to have lower back mobility, and we need to be able to feel like you can move both separately. So if I have Wes do a setup here, I'll kind of demo what I'm talking about. So the spine shouldn't move as a single unit. It should move in segments. You should be able to separate your upper back and your lower back. So you want to be able to see that when you move the lower back, the upper back isn't moving. So we're going to have you try and go tailbone up here, Wes, and then try and tuck your tailbone under. So we should be seeing that movement coming through the lower back. A lot of the time, most of us don't have that ability to separate, and we tend to get, when we're moving our spine, we get a lot of movement through the whole spine. So one of the biggest things is we know that we tend to slouch throughout the day. So when we get into our posture, we think, okay, well, we know we slouch, so let's get into a really good straight posture. And because we can't straighten through the upper back in separation, we tend to get too tense in the lower back. So first thing we really want to do is start to mobilize that spine in what we call flexion and extension. And you'll see a lot of different videos on this throughout the TV. But spinal mobility and flexion extension is very, very important to get you into a good golf posture. And more specifically, we call it spinal segmentation. So we want to be able to segment that spine so you can get yourself into a really good neutral posture. So the second thing with posture that I really like to see is a good hip hinge. So the hips need to be able to move fairly fluidly, again, through flexion and extension. So Wes is going to do a nice hip hinge here. The tendency is for people to just kind of get into a knee bend and then an unathletic posture, and that's when we see more of that C posture coming in. So spinal mobility, very important for setup. Hip mobility, hip mechanics, and movement, really important for that setup. Last one here would be ankles and feet. So if you're really quite restricted in your ankles, you may find that your weight tends to shift to the heels. So again, another very common one we tend to see, weight tends to shift to the heels, and then you start your swing a little bit off balance. So we've got ankles, we've got hips, we've got back. So there's a lot of kind of body connection just in the setup alone. So now we're going to talk about backswing. So I think for backswing, actually, yeah, you're going to stay there, Wes. We'll go this way first. So with backswing, there's a lot of joints that we really need to be mobile to be able to get a good backswing. So if you want to go ahead and start to take it back there, Wes. So first thing we really like to see mobility-wise for a backswing, upper back mobility. So the thoracic spine or upper back needs to be able to rotate to get you into a good rotation in the backswing. Go ahead and take it all the way up to the top there for me. So the next thing would be this lead shoulder. So if you're a right-handed golfer, the left shoulder, we want to see good mobility through the shoulder, good mobility through the shoulder blade to get this nice width as well as height in the backswing. A lot of people that have a lot of tightness here will tend to really collapse this lead arm, and that can lead to some inconsistencies in the downswing as well. So we've got upper back mobility, we've got lead shoulder mobility, and then a big one here is also wrist. So if your wrists aren't able to, what we call radial deviate, we can't get a good a good wrist hinge. That's another restriction here. And then we're going to look at this trail the trail shoulder as well. So I would say trail shoulder for a lot of people, this causes a lot of issues in the swing. So the trail shoulder goes through what we call external rotation, which is the ability of the elbow to kind of come down and into this almost like tray holding position. And Wes, if you maybe want to talk a little bit for me about how this external rotation helps get that club through the ball into the downswing here.
So specifically, if we can't externally rotate that shoulder, the club will tend to get into a steeper position, which gets us into a swing that tends to come more across it, more of a slicer swing for a right-hander, left to right, for a right-hander. Whereas if we can externally rotate that trail shoulder, we can get this club into what everyone calls a shallow position, to where you can get into a better position to turn through the ball.
So we find that a lot of people come to us with trying to get more speed, trying to shallow the club better, trying to come more from the inside because they tend to come over the top. But a lot of the time, this shoulder is a big restrictor of that. So if you don't have decent external rotation in that trail shoulder, it's going to be very difficult for you to get those positions. And the only way you're going to be able to get those positions is if you start to adjust the body or compensate in the swing. So exactly, so if you try and make that happen and the body or the joint won't allow for it, you will make that compensation in your golf swing.
Especially if you're in this position and can't externally rotate that shoulder.
Exactly.
The only way to do that is to
So you've got to make a body compensation.
back up as well.
You got it. Yeah, so the better the joint function, the better your golf swing is going to be. You're going to be able to do the positions or accomplish positions that you may want to, and you won't have all that compensation. So that's definitely the backswing. So now let's maybe talk a little bit about coming down into transition. So as we come down into transition, now we're really looking at kind of sequencing, timing. Lower body's got to move first, upper body's got to kind of come separately or second. So we need a lot of hip rotation here. We need pelvic control. So the ability of, so if you want to come up to the top there, Wes. So if I just hold Wes's arms up here, you're going to notice that the lower body can initiate first, whereas most people don't have separation or we're too tight and we're not mobile enough to get the hips to move first. Most of the time it'll tend to be this kind of connected lower body, upper body, they both come together. So if you want to improve your transition, we really need to improve the mobility and the separation of lower body from upper body. And then downswing, it's really going to carry right through into the downswing here. I'm going to have you actually face camera on here, Wes, for me. So when we talk about downswing, this is really kind of the meat and potatoes for most of us here. So we really tend to struggle. This is where amateurs and pros really kind of, a big difference between the two is professionals are very good at rotating the hips through the ball. Lead hip goes through quite a bit of what we call internal rotation. And if you're blocked here, this can affect your lower back health. So we can really start to get too much compensation through the lower back. We can change the posture so we can adjust the swing to get more mobility there. So to get, from a mobility perspective, this lead hip is a really, really big, a very important aspect of the downswing. And then we are looking at, we still look at this trail shoulder external rotation, what Wes was talking about with being able to shallow the swing. So in the downswing, that's going to allow you to shallow. So trail shoulder external rotation is quite important. And then we don't think of it quite as much, but this trail hip is what we call, is going through external rotation. And if that's restricted, then again, you might have some issues coming through the swing here as well. So downswing, we really want to make sure that the hips are moving well. We want to make sure that we have separation so that we can get a really good lower body leading the downswing, and that's what most of us struggle with. And then we just finish it off into the follow through from there. So coming through into the follow through, it's just more exaggerated downswing basically. So we need to be able to get all the way through. Again, you need that really good lead hip rotation into internal rotation. We're looking at some more upper back rotation here into the finish as well. We do look at the lead ankle quite a bit here too. So the lead ankle needs to have the ability to rotate, but it also needs to be able to do a little bit of that, what we call inversion, which is the foot rolling in. That's a good energy release if the hip can't do it. Perfect. So the body plays a really, really big role in the swing. And if we don't have the proper joint function or the proper joint mobility, you're going to see those compensations coming up in the golf swing. And this is one of the things that we talk about all the time here at Dynamic Motion. You want to make sure that you know what the cause of your issue is. So is it that your body's restricting the motion? Is it that maybe it's just a technical issue, a learning issue where you just need to come in and just have some repetitions, have the right drills? Or is it really a joint restriction that's not allowing you to do it and you need to improve that mobility? So when you're trying to make some changes in your golf swing, you want to make sure that you can come back to this kind of body swing connection and see if you're restricted in some of these joints that could be causing some of those errors. There's lots of videos on the TV that's going to help you to improve that mobility in different joints and help break it down for you as well. So hopefully this gives you a little better idea of how the body plays a role in the golf swing and how you can start to improve it.